the comments I said in the media center is that, every time we've reduced horsepower, we started reducing horsepower years and years ago, but it's just been a slow cut, really. Could you imagine, though? We were supposed to run 550 horsepower. That's what NASCAR had on tap for us to run this next-gen car is 550 until we ran a December test at Charlotte the year before the next-gen came out, and everyone was like, this is terrible. You cannot do this. This is so bad. And so then they bumped it up to 650. So we were supposed to run 550. I could not imagine it would be would just be really, really bad for sure. That's why I argue that, hey, why can't we just give us what we had a few years ago, the 750? Travis, you brought up a good point about, Jeff Gluck talked about on the teardown yesterday about it's not that easy. I simply said in my media availability, I said, well, how do we fix it? I mean, why can't we do it? And I says, well, it's easy. You can be done with one phone call. It can be done. And I based that comment off of not my feeling. I don't build the engines. I listen to TRD. I listen to Doug Yates and who was the engine builder for RCR. I'm not really sure, but I listened to them all say, yeah, that is not a game changer for us. He said it was not that easy, correct?
Yeah, he said he talked to somebody, an engine builder. It didn't seem as easy as you made it out to be.
Right. We can't just replace the plate, basically, is what I was saying, is that it's a little piece of aluminum that chokes these engines down. Yeah, that's probably a little bit, it's oversimplifying it. There's a few more changes, but it's not like it's not a hard task, for sure. It certainly...
Does it cost more money?
The engine bills are the same. I've been saying this forever. The engine bills are the same now as they were when they were 900, Jared.
All right, well, I'm going to ask you the same question.
We buy engines, we know.
I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked you last year. Is it then why not change it? If it's just such a simple fix, what is the argument for not doing it?
I'll tell you the same thing I told Dustin Long. Call Jim France and ask. I don't know. I don't have the answers for that.
Have you called him?
I think he has my number blocked. I'm kidding. I don't know. I mean, I've seen
a different number.
I've seen star 69 or 67, right?
67.
I don't know. I mean, you hear O'Donnell talk about it, because the reporters ask him constantly. The drivers overwhelmingly want this. That seems like the media or the fans want this. Why not? And they usually have a reason, but sometimes it's, hey, we're looking at all options, right? We're not ruling it out. We're not saying we are, right? This is the first thing when it comes to horsepower. It's the first thing that I've not seen NASCAR react to the media about. Usually they react to everything. When something is hot media-wise, they react to it. This is the one thing they've dug their heels into the ground and said, no. Right? So there's clearly a reason that is not being explained to the people or the drivers of why we are where we are.
So this is also not talked about behind closed doors with drivers.
We have competition updates with NASCAR all the time. And I mean, it's every time we have a meeting, someone says, why not horsepower? There's just... I wish I can't even give you the answer because I don't recall what they even said because it didn't matter. What they said was it wasn't an answer. It's an answer that's not an answer. It's just not. I think that we need to know what is keeping you from this. I mean, certainly, that what has happened over the course of time is straightaway speeds have gone down, corner speeds have gone up, and anytime you have super high corner speeds, passing becomes difficult. And the more on throttle time you have, the less chance it is for me to have more balls than you to drive in the corner deeper. And because you're driving in really hard. My crew chief asked, well, why couldn't you pass Noah at the end of the race? I'm like, he was driving in so deep, I could never get position on him until it was too late off the corner. And so had his car been, had he had to get out of the gas because he's carrying too much speed in, then I would have had a chance to charge in the corner, maybe slide him. But just that aspect of it made it very, very difficult. And so I understand what the people want. I understand what NASCAR wants. I wish we could just meet in the middle, right? We don't need 900 horsepower back. I mean, it'd be nice, but those days are gone, I think, in the near term. I would certainly like to see him just try it. Just try it at a test. I mean, we know what it's going to do. It certainly would put, in my opinion, the driver's skill more as a showcase. And if we want to create stars are the ones that are good week in, week out. The Kyle Larsons of the world, Ryan Blaney's of the world, Christopher Bell's of the world. They find ways to win week in, week out and be competitive because they're just better drivers. That's just a fact. And so we want to highlight their skill, not their track position.
Didn't we talk about at some point that if you added horsepower, you'd be able to use an engine less? Like you wouldn't be able to use it over and over again. But you had said before we started that these engines only get used maybe twice.
Yeah, they get used twice right now. I'm trying to figure out the year, and I asked. Okay, just got a text back. For 7 or 8 years, we've been running engines twice a year for 7 to 8 years. So that we were running 900 horsepower 7, 8 years ago. Is that right? So 7 or 8 years we've been running. The engine bills have been the same for 7 to 8 years. We were running 750 horsepower on short tracks the last year of Gen 6, which was 2021. Is that correct? 2021? Yep. Okay. So yeah, I don't see, more than likely when an engine builder says to us that it's not that easy, that we can't just replace the plate, what I've been told just from the people I know is that, yeah, it's maybe not that easy, but we have the parts. We have the stuff to make that 750 horsepower engine optimum and be able to run for multiple races, because we've run these engines for 2 times a year for 7 or 8 years now. It's not like we cut this horsepower just so we could run them more races. It's the same. It's part of a bigger plan from NASCAR, but we just don't know what that plan is. You know what I mean? There's just not been enough transparency of why the horsepower has been reduced. And I think we're all open to listening to it. I certainly would be. I'm not going to just say this is ridiculous and, I can't believe you're not doing it. Like, tell me the real story so I can understand your point of view. Like, we would love to have the discussion with NASCAR of what would it hurt? Just what would it really hurt to add 100 horsepower to these engines? And 100 is not going to change the game for sure, but it will make it incrementally better.
Honda only wants 650 horsepower.
Huh?
Honda only wants 650 horsepower.
Listen here. There's going to be a day in the very near future where you probably can build any engine you want, and NASCAR will just have torque sensors and say you can only have this much horsepower. Build whatever engine you want. It could be a V6, fucking V24. Who knows? Like, they're going to make it to where everyone runs the same horsepower anyway. And really, that probably would help the engine builders save as much money as anyone. Is that if you look at like sprint car engines and whatnot, yes, they're very, very expensive, but the cost is down because there is kind of no limit, as far as I understand. There's no limit on your engines, right? I mean, they have to stay within certain general parameters, but it's because they can't even use all the horsepower they've got. So it's certainly, if you opened up the engines to where you told these engine builders, listen, I don't care what you bring, you can only have this much horsepower, then you potentially could lower the engine bills dramatically, because they can run cheaper parts in there, more durable parts, and then everyone's just going to be the same horsepower, and it could be all kinds of different engines, and I think that will happen in the future for sure. When you kind of digest this whole Chastain Larson thing, you definitely have to go back earlier